You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Hey folks, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Dr. Richard Harden. We are on the same mission, which is waking up America. We just have different paths. So stay tuned for some information on how you can keep up with Richard and all his work.
Visit Richard's website at raharden.com. That's the World Wide Web at RAHARDIN.com. At his website, you can see a summary of the 6 books he has written, where purchases may be made. He also has a link to 18 videos on YouTube and several blogs about Christian beliefs. If you prefer, visit Amazon.com/Kindle and type in Richard Harden to see and purchase his books.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks, good evening. This is Jenn and Rick. I am one half of the crew, Mr. Rick Robbins. She's the other half, Jen. And actually, we are having a bit of a technical issue. So bear with me for just one moment because I had this really good idea of how I was going to open the show. And the board is not cooperating with me. Surprise, surprise. So give me just one moment here to get things squared away.
Engine start. May the wee ones be with you, Thomas. Good Lord, ride all the way. Godspeed, John Glenn. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 0.
So for those of you who may not have heard, John Glenn actually passed away today, which is really kind of sad for the entire country. I mean, he was actually a lifelong hero of mine. He's been a hero of mine for about as long as I can remember because I was really, really young before I've known who he was pretty much my entire life. So he's always been a hero of mine. I was sad to hear that he passed. I mean, he's been amazing. He's actually set a record for being the oldest man to travel into space, and it's just kind of a sad day all around. I mean, I'm happy for him and sad at the same time because I'm pretty sure I know where he wound up, which is why we wanted to open the show by saying Godspeed, John Glenn. But at the same time, it's a sad day for most of America because we lost a national hero.
Yeah, we did. However, what a life! 95 years old. You know, all of the things that he did, the risks that he took as a Marine, as an astronaut, as a senator, all of these things, some more than others, put his life in great danger a lot of times, and he took a lot of risk to forge a new frontier for America and for the world. And so, oh my goodness, 95 years old. He lived through it all. He lived to see computers going from the size of encompassing an entire room in a building to being able to be held in your hand. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not even, I mean, that's a really big thing that he witnessed. But, I mean, he's actually old enough that he was, around right about the time that electricity really started becoming common. He was around long enough that there was still a time that cars weren't even really all that common yet. And it's just amazing to think about the things that he witnessed in his life and how quickly our whole species started accelerating, because for the longest time things were basically kind of the same. You had a horse, you had bow and arrows, you had slings, you had swords, and then around 17, 18, 1900s things kind of sped up a little bit. We started doing firearms. You had the flintlock muskets, and the next thing you know, there's like repeating rifles and all these other things, and then horses get replaced by automobiles that now, we've got cars that are now learning to drive themselves. Speaking of which, freaky thing I heard about today, just as a bit of a side note, because we've kind of branched off into how things have changed. I just saw an article today that apparently they are testing police motorcycles that not only can drive themselves, but will be like drones and give people tickets. I'm having Terminator flashes, I'm just saying.
Oh my gosh, that kind of thing is crazy. I mean, I'm not a fan of some of that stuff and like the red light thing, which I do think there have been several cities in Texas that have shot it down actually once it was challenged in courts, namely the city of Arlington. Put up a bunch of expensive red light cameras and then took them down because a lower level court determined that it did violate rights and did not give was not adequate evidence for any wrongdoing, because obviously it's just a picture taken and, there's algorithms involved, there's sensors involved and all that kind of thing that can be compromised. But I was going to say one last note about Glenn. I couldn't find it, but a few years ago I remember hearing him where he talked about something where he said he went into space with technology that was less than what we consider like throwaway technology now. So he trusted his life and was launched into outer space with less technology than some of the video games that are now like obsolete, or some of the, various computers that are now obsolete. He went to space and orbited this planet with less technology than that, and certainly less than what we hold in our hand every day, and probably the desktop or laptops that we're talking to each other on right now. So I think it's just like a real neat perspective and like pretty phenomenal what has transpired throughout his life, and the ingenuity of the human race, really.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because to put that in perspective, because some people, I mean, those of us like you and I that are around computers all day, we use technology. It's how I make a living. It's how I do all my hobbies. It's how I make some money on the side. I mean, I cannot. There's not a minute that goes by that I'm not connected to something. But some people don't really have any way to put this in perspective. So just to help you understand this, for those of you that maybe are not really that computer savvy, let's say for the sake of argument, you have maybe a PlayStation 4 in your living room. The PlayStation 4 that you regularly play video games on is about 1 million times more powerful than what John Glenn used to go into space. Just to put that in comparison, if you have a toaster in your home right now, it likely has more computing power than that entire capsule did. And those are kind of the things that astound even me as somebody who grew up hearing about those stories and was kind of the dawn of the science fiction age where it really started taking off and everybody started thinking about what life was going to be like by the year 2000 and beyond, because we were getting to the point where we were getting pretty long in the tooth for the 20th century, so everybody was really wondering what was coming next. And to think about the fact that they basically went into space on a wing and a prayer and managed to pull it off. And now we just kind of limp around like we've been there, done that. And I don't understand where we lost our spirit for adventure in a lot of ways. Because,
oh man, look, I've got a couple younger cousins that, go through iPhones, crack them, drop them, whatever, and act like, whatever, grandma will just give me a new one, or I'll just buy a new one because I get a ridiculous allowance compared to anything I've ever heard of. And, it's so shrugged off. It's so whatever. Oh, I have 3 monitors so that I can do this game where I'm online and I'm challenging 18 different people at once, and I can see all the things that are happening. And they don't give it a second thought. And it's not even remotely remarkable to them. And I'm on the very, very high end of what is considered a millennial, which is a term and a label that I reject wholeheartedly, because I'm lumped in with people that have had a cell phone since they were 5 years old. And I still remember that we had to wait our turn, and it took up the phone lines. We only got 10-minute intervals, and obviously even no internet before that, I remember also. But, just not appreciating these kinds of things. Like, there are times where even today, like, I look down at my phone and I'm like, I'm getting impatient because this person isn't answering me right now. Or, it's been 12 hours since I got a response from Toys R Us, customer service that I put in for a missing item that wasn't delivered. And I'm like tapping my fingers going, but wait a second, this is ridiculous. Like, not even a decade ago, I couldn't expect this kind of instant communication. It's just truly phenomenal. And I think that it's kind of lost and especially younger kids, because they've just grown up immersed in it, have kind of lost the remarkability of it, and just how genius all of this is, and how almost magical. I mean, this is what we kind of would have considered magic back in the day, like, a wireless, like, instant message and computer and blah, 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 like all of these things. It's really kind of crazy.
I have 2 words: 3D printing.
Oh my gosh, blow my mind.
I mean, seriously, we're like really watching the beginnings of very, very early replicator technology, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. Because, I mean, especially I grew up watching, you walk over to a console, here's a computer, make this for me, and it spits it out. And we're kind of getting to that point. I mean, I literally, and granted, it's not quite as far along as they're making it sound on TV, but it's getting really close. I watched an episode of a show that I'm actually kind of getting into on CBS called Pure Genius. And the interesting thing about that is it's a billionaire who's basically built a hospital where he uses his money to get all the best technology and everything. And it's kind of like, if you've ever paid attention to how they do things at, I think it's St. Jude's, the one where basically if you no bills, no, don't have to worry about anything. They put you up, they put your family up while they're there. So it's the same general concept, except it's kind of for everybody and he usually brings in like interesting cases because he's like this weird eccentric guy. But anyway, I'm kind of digressing a little bit. On one of the episodes, they were actually using 3D printing to replace scar tissue from a burn accident. And they went through the whole thing of, the FDA wouldn't give them approval. Well, the chief of staff's wife actually works for the FDA, and they're actually separated right now because he took this job and she didn't want their oldest to leave on his senior year. So they actually flew her in, wined and dined her, and eventually convinced her to do this thing. And it was just kind of interesting to think about because we really are kind of getting to that point. They're starting to use 3D printing to do some really amazing things. And it's just an interesting time to be alive because you're watching all of these things happen that used to completely be science fiction. And it's people like Glenn that went and did the impossible, that started pushing people and making them realize that things that we thought were never going to happen are more possible than we ever realized. And I think in a lot of ways, they were kind of the last pioneers. I don't know if we're going to get back that spirit or not, because it seems like we've just lost it somewhere. Nobody's really willing to put anything on the line anymore. They're just not. That we have all of these safety regulations and all of these things that we have to worry about. And I mean, dude, it's like me growing up as a kid. We didn't even know what a seatbelt was when I was a kid. Now, I'm not saying that makes things better or worse than they were now, but it's just what are we going to do? Put ourselves in bubble wrap? I mean, when are we going to start taking risks to make things better again? That's what I want to know, because we were supposed to be doing amazing things by now. Where's my flying car? I want my flying car.
I want my Jetsons episode. Dang it.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think that, I don't think that we have completely abandoned it, to be fair. I think the priorities have just shifted. So other things have developed and taken precedence. And some of that has been in regards to things like even with the government, like war, like medical technology, and then in the private sector, also medical, but, gearing things like as the internet like became a thing and you had more STEM stuff going on, like developing different heating techniques, and also having social media even is kind of revolutionary. I think it just kind of shifted. So the focus we thought would be forever space exploration and then ability to have easier travel into space has not been as important compared to other things that have come about. So, but I do think that there is something to be said for there being sort of a loss of that kind of adventure and risk-taking to kind of expand our world, expand our universe. And that has certainly fallen to the wayside.
So, hang on, I'm confused. Do you agree with me or disagree with me? Because in the beginning of that statement, you kind of sounded like you were like,
I agree with you. I agree with you that those kinds of things have been neglected and are no longer like being sought after. I'm just saying that I don't think it's because we are just like lacking in ingenuity. It's just pushed over to other areas, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see your point. I don't know. I guess I'm just a little bummed. I kind of get this way anytime anybody that I know that went into space dies because I'm always thinking, by now we were all supposed to kind of have a shot. I mean, granted, I'm an old fat white guy who's probably never going to be able to go into space, so I have to deal with that pain. But at the same time, I'm just thinking, I mean, we were supposed to have like a moon base by now. We were supposed to have Mars colonies by now. I mean, come on. All the books and TV shows and movies said so. I want to know. I want my Mars colony. Kind of digressing a little bit, but anyway, I blame the day job because I've been hanging out with IT nerds again. I kind of felt like I walked into a home away from home though, because I sat down and within like 5 seconds they were talking about Doctor Who versus which Star Trek series was better. I'm like, holy crap, I'm home. I am such a nerd. I hide it most of the time, but I really am a nerd. Well, I try to hide it most of the time. I don't think I do a very good job. But anyway, I think we've about talked that particular topic today.
Yeah, no kidding. We took up almost half the show doing that.
So anyway, lots of other interesting things going on in the news, and we actually have some audio clips for some of them, so we definitely want to try to get through what we have prepped. So, Harry Reid's retiring.
Woohoo!
Happy days. I'm just saying. Of course, he couldn't resist taking a pot shot on his way out the door. Let me get that queued up. Make sure it's the right one. I think this is it. Yeah, this is some audio from, and I actually condensed it because it was like 50 some odd minutes long. I found like the most important minute or so.
We're entering a new Gilded Age, and it's never been more important to be able to distinguish between what is real and what is fake. We have lawmakers pushing for tax cuts for billionaires and calling it populism. We have media outlets pushing conspiracy theories disguised as news. Separating real from fake has never been more important. The media that focuses on scandals and spread fake news to smear politicians risks becoming like people who have a morbid fascination with excrement. That's what Pope Francis said. He added that using communications for this rather than educate the public amounted to a sin. Well, he can categorize sin. I can't, but I agree with him on what he just said. I acknowledge the importance of the press. I admire what you do and understand the challenges ahead of you. But be vigilant, because you have as much to do with our democracy as any branch of government. This is best understood by listening to what George Orwell had to say a long time ago. I quote, Freedom of the press, if it means anything at all, means the freedom to criticize and oppose. So, press, criticize and oppose. Please do that.
Unless, of course, you're criticizing or opposing Obama, and then you're racist. Now, I want to back up to something he said there at the very beginning, because he started talking about tax cuts for billionaires being passed off as populism. Now, I'm confused because so far the only thing I've really heard Donald Trump say is he's going to cut to 3 tax brackets, and he's going to cut the corporate tax rate in America to try to foster job growth and bring some jobs home. So I'm confused because if you Citizens United has this whole thing about, donations and, according to that, corporations are people, blah, blah, blah. Democrats had really big problems with corporations being people, and yet when he's talking about cutting corporate tax rates, all of a sudden we're cutting tax rates for billionaires. I'm confused because if corporations aren't people, how are we cutting taxes for billionaires? You can't have it both ways, Harry. I know you're on the way out the door, but you can't keep talking out of both sides of your mouth. It don't work. Just saying.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's kind of like the people today saying, like, I hope you filibuster, yada, 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 these appointments. And they go,
no, that wasn't people. That was George Takei.
Well, it was, but then there were also idiots following in line who didn't realize that was no longer a thing.
It's no longer possible.
They killed it. So
yeah. Wait. Who specifically killed it? I think we were just listening to him bloviate.
Exactly. So I just think it all kind of ties in. It's also really funny that they can't filibuster. Wah, too bad.
And we kept warning them because, everybody started. I mean, the last time the Republicans had power, they were like, nuclear option, we need it. And they're like, no, that's not a good idea. Because if we do that, then when things shift, it's going to be their turn. And then the Democrats were like, nuclear option. And the Republicans are like, that's a really, really bad idea, Harry. You really don't want to do that, Harry. Oh, he did it. Oh, great. Look, now we don't have to worry about filibustering for appointments because you went nuclear. 2 words, and one of them I can't say on the radio. The other one's dumb.
Exactly. Yep. Well, they get to lie in the bed they made, and I ain't mad about it right now. I do think that it was a terrible decision in the first place to ever nuke that, but I'm kind of laughing out loud right now. Gotta say.
It's just interesting to me because when things change like this, because it's funny, because when they had the House, they had the Senate, and then they took the presidency, and then they lost the House first, then they lost the Senate, then they thought they were getting it back this time, but the entire time, anytime anyone spoke out about Obama or any of his policies, they were un-American. It was anti-American to do that, and now that the shoe is back on the other foot, oh my God, we have to have a free press. Free press must oppose Donald Trump. I don't understand. I'm just saying this about everybody at this point. I'm tired of when the worm turns, everything changes. That's not how this is supposed to work. If it's bad when you're the minority party, it should be just as bad when you're the majority party. And that is what's starting to tick me off everywhere. Because it's the same thing over and over and over again. The Republicans used to be the ones, well, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and it's okay to criticize. And now that President-elect Trump is about to take office, you can't criticize Donald Trump anymore. That's not American. He's going to be the president. Really? I can't criticize him even when he's going on a 3 a.m. Twitter rant, when he's missing security briefings? Hello?
I'm also sick of the opposite side, and you and I were kind of on a thread with this today, of just doubling down and being like, no matter what, he's the devil and everything is awful, and calling all of his cabinet picks a Nazi crew. Like, that's not fair either. So I'm kind of having a hard time with both sides. I've got the side that is telling me, I'm too critical, and then I've got the side that's telling me I'm not critical enough, and like I am not allowed to be in the middle at all or be objective or take it case by case, and that's infuriating because I feel like as a person who has followed politics for most of my adult life, or all of my adult life, and most of my like teen to adult life.
Whatever, millennial.
I have always kind of tried. I've known where I stood, and I know what my morals and my values and my character and my principles are in politics. But I've always tried to stay objective and fair. And I feel like with Trump being president-elect, I'm getting shot by both sides. I'm used to being the enemy of the left and having a few allies there, or at least having some respectable debates with people there. And I'm used to fending off some of the more crazy faction of the right. I am not used to having it come all the time, all day, every day, from both sides, and not being able to please anybody on the right, really. There's just like a small section of us, and I'm glad that it's people like you and a few of our other friends that we're kind of in that crawl space in between on the right that's like, okay, I'm going to criticize when worth criticizing, and I'm going to agree when worth agreeing. I'm going to applaud a pick that's good, and I'm going to denounce a pick that's bad. What is so wrong? Why can people not be that way anymore? It's like they've all gone loony.
It's actually, it's interesting that you bring that up. Then we've got to take a really quick break. One of the things that I thought was amazing is because I'm going through a training program for an IT specialty group that I've actually been assigned to for the remainder of the year, because I actually have previous IT experience, and that particular contract is going away. Uh-oh, I lost her altogether. Let me see if I can get her back. I think she may have just hung up on me.
Ruh-roh.
I thought you were like, I'm done with this conversation.
No way. No way.
All right. So anyway, so I have been going through some training, and it was interesting to talk with the guy that's been training us, because he was talking about one of the methods that they use for troubleshooting and how it all involves critical thinking. And he was talking about MIT, because recently they had been talking about the fact that they have these really, really intelligent scientists who can't seem to pull off control group studies anymore because they don't really have the ability to critical think. And what he's talking about is kind of the same troubleshooting method where you start listing things and you kind of draw circles and where everything kind of lands. If you have more things, or the thing that's the most common between the three circles is usually probably the issue. For some reason, the name of the method actually escapes me for the moment. But he was referring to the same thing with like control group studies, because they were actually, MIT professors were having difficulty getting grants and papers done for their grants because they weren't able to make control group studies work, because they weren't realizing what you needed to do was have a total of usually anywhere from 3 to 4 groups. A control group, which had absolutely nothing going on with the actual study, just so that you could see what changed or what didn't. One group to test one sample, one group to test the other sample, and if you had a third sample, another one to test that one, so that you could compare the differences between those and the control groups. And it was funny, and the reason I bring this up is because it's kind of what we see going on here. Nobody has any critical thinking skills anymore, and that was what somebody from MIT pointed out. And they were like, well, maybe do you guys not have any classes that teach critical thinking skills? And they were like, nobody teaches that anymore. Are you crazy? And it was just kind of one of those things that it's kind of stuck with me all week, because we're watching all of these people completely freak out over things that really shouldn't matter to them that much if they have the ability to stop and think. And we have people that are being susceptible to groupthink because they really don't have the ability to think for themselves anymore. And it is so much more common on the right than I ever thought possible that it scares me. I mean, I've literally, over the course of this past week, heard Rush Limbaugh cheerleading for $1 trillion stimulus package. That
yeah. I can't even.
But yeah, I mean, so it's just one of those things where, it's, well, when the Dems said we were going to do a $1 trillion stimulus package and have shovel-ready jobs, that was a terrible idea. But now that Donald Trump's saying almost exactly the same thing, it'll be all right because he actually knows how to get it done. We'll see. But I still don't think $1 trillion stimulus plan is a good idea. But we actually, when we come back, we're going to backtrack just a little bit and go back to the left melting down some, because you had mentioned something that I actually have some audio about, and that is the whole freak out over some of his picks and Donald Trump's recent selection as Times Person of the Year. But we have got to take a really quick break. This is Jenn and Rick. We'll be right back here in a couple minutes.
And so, my my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
As a mother, you don't want to have to worry about this bill is coming, but then she needs this chemo. That's a decision you shouldn't have to make.
At St. Jude, a family never sees a bill at all. It's like the world has been lifted off of your shoulders.
The treatment doesn't get any better than what you receive at St. Jude. It saved my life. It saved my daughter's life. It saved our family.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures. Saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
Think fast. In the short time it takes to listen to this message, a small flame can turn into a big fire. Several minutes more, and thick, poisonous smoke may have filled your lungs and reduced your ability to respond. Give it 5, and your entire home may be filled with flames.
Keep breathing. We've got you.
Don't let your world go up in smoke. Have working smoke alarms and always stay in the kitchen when cooking at high temperatures. Learn more at usfa.fema.gov because fire is everyone's fight.
Federalism, It's when more than one government control the same area. It's not an ideology, or rather, federalism is a political structure where we rely on the Constitution of the United States to define the role of our federal government. The Federalist Coalition is the next principled grassroots movement created, managed, and fueled by everyday, hard-working Americans just like you. Our goal is to educate our fellow Americans as to the proper role of government as defined by our great Constitution, and help promote legislation that will return power back to the hands of the people. So join us at thefederalistcoalition.com. Join us today in our pursuit of a more perfect union and help us to promote liberty for all Americans.
Bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks, welcome back, and sorry for that bit of dead air there. The board and I were having an argument again. Seems to be a recurring theme tonight. All right, so before we went to break, I actually said we had at least one other audio clip that I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to play. And this one is kind of interesting because apparently the left is having a bit of a meltdown over Donald Trump being announced as a Times Person of the Year. And we have some audio from, I think it's from Tucker Carlson tonight. I'm not entirely sure because it's been a while since I pulled it. But here it is.
For joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
The reason I want to talk to you was a tweet that you sent out after seeing the cover, I think, on the Today Show this morning, and you wrote this. Adolf Hitler was Times Man of the Year in 1938. Donald Trump is Times Man of the Year in 2016. Discuss. And I just saw the irony there because comparing someone to Hitler, of course, is not an invitation to discuss. It's the end of the discussion, isn't it?
Well, I think that there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from the 1930s and Nazi Germany. Not to say that this is the identical situation, but there's a lot to be gained from looking back, how we cannot make the same mistakes of the past.
Huh. So what kind of conversation, describe the discussion that you were trying to invoke by comparing Trump to Hitler.
I think that it's very important that we are critical, that we do not normalize or sanitize the rhetoric or actions of Donald Trump or the ghastly appointees to his new administration. And I want people to remain vigilant. I want people to realize that none of this is normal. None of the hate speech, the hate crimes that are spiking in the United States. And we, as the American people, have to hold our president-elect accountable.
Okay.
So where were we, when and where were we holding Barack Obama accountable for the rise of Black Lives Matter? That has been something that has been bothering me now for months because I keep hearing about how racist everyone is now and how hate-filled they are now, all because they decided to give Donald Trump a shot. Look, I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. He wasn't my choice. I didn't even vote for the man, but he's going to be president. He is President-elect of the United States, and the simple fact of the matter is he is going to be president. I gave Obama a shot against my better judgment, and this time I'm still being more critical of Donald Trump than I was even of Barack Obama. But let's face it, it's kind of easy this time because Barack Obama didn't make all of his decisions as publicly as Donald Trump is making them now. Barack Obama told us a lot of things that were supposed to happen, and then they didn't. The thing that I will actually give Donald Trump credit for is I don't remember the last time that I saw a president-elect basically announcing to the press every time he's made a decision about who his cabinet was going to be, at least up until the point in time that it was actually time for them to be confirmed. So at least he seems to be trying to do things in the light of day, as opposed to Barack Obama, who told us that was what he was going to do, and then he did the exact opposite. And race relations have gone back to pre-1960s levels in this country at this point because they have allowed the hate to continue to grow and fester with one side of the population that now at this point is self-segregating themselves and calling for their own money, their own schools, their own banks, because black people need it just as good as white people. And I've actually heard that over and over and over again within the last 2 years. So I'm really, really tired of all of these people that are like, we have to do something about all of these racists. Where were you when cities were burning in 2000 from 2008 to 2016, because it happened at least once a year, sometimes twice, for pretty much that whole time frame. Where were you then?
Yeah, I mean, also I think this is so silly that this whole like Hitler, Stalin, yada yada about the time of the year, person of the year, which, by the way, I think is kind of funny that it took until 1999 for them to call it person of the year instead of man of the year. But trying to implicate him in some way by tying him to Hitler and Stalin because he was chosen for the cover is really pretty absurd. I mean, we're talking about, Queen Elizabeth in 1952. We're talking about Angela Merkel in 2015. We're talking about Gandhi, MLK, Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis, the American soldier as a whole in 2003, American women in 1975. And then you've got Obama twice, you, as in every single one of us, in 2006. And every president except Coolidge, Hoover, and Ford were put on the cover at least once as person of the year, as man of the year. FDR 3 times, but Putin in 2007. I mean, they've given some sort of criteria for this, and doesn't necessarily mean the best thing, but they've used it as both the best and the worst, or the most influential, or someone that has kind of wreaked havoc on the news cycle. It's such a lame attempt to try to actually tie him to fascists and to dictators. I have no real faith in Trump in general, but I do have faith in some of the people that he's choosing. And the media has just suddenly woken up and decided to be journalists. They've decided to actually engage in real journalism and be critical and be skeptical and hold feet to the fire, as they have not done for 8 years with Obama. So, their way of acting on all of this crap and how they're acting appalled about certain things, I can just tell them to go take a hike. Good for them for finally wanting to do their jobs.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because you're talking about media trying to actually be media again. But, the funny thing is, it actually looks like Time is really just out to sell magazines, because they did something that if you just kind of glance at the cover, you're like, what in the world did they do? They did the conscious thing of making sure that they centered Trump's head just within reach of the M. So if you look at it just as a passing glance, the M actually looks like devil horns. And I think whoever set up the cover did that on purpose. I really do.
And they may have also, I don't know if you noticed, but the chair is kind of ragged and worn. And I don't know if that's supposed to be antique-y or if it's supposed to be against his glitz and glam of his, gold-plated everything, and to kind of bring a contrast. I don't really care. I think a friend of mine pointed out that it looks actually more like cat ears than it looks like devil horns. And I don't know if it was intentional or not. I don't really care. It's a stupid magazine and honor. But I mean, obviously they're biased. Obviously. This is no secret. It wasn't a secret before Obama, but it just became painfully obvious during the Obama years how incredibly biased and protectionist our fourth institution of government, our lovely media, is, which is, by the way, I think exactly what they've become, is kind of a fourth arm of our government, especially during Obama.
Definitely seems that way. Now, you'd also mentioned, some of his appointees, or his hopeful appointees. One of them has me doing a happy dance. Actually, a few of them do, to be honest. But one of them is right here from Oklahoma. He has selected Attorney General Scott Pruitt to head the EPA. Now, for those of you who don't know much about Scott Pruitt, he's actually been a staunch advocate against the EPA in a lot of ways for the last several years, and actually has gone head-to-head with them in multiple lawsuits, and actually has one pending now over issues with farming and a few other things that are going on in my state. And because he feels like they continually use their power and authority as an overreach. And I happen to agree in a lot of ways. So the meltdown of the left, watching someone who has, again, been tagged as a climate denier, becoming the possible, well, actually, as long as he gets appointed, the head of the EPA. Not only is it delicious because I have some experience with the man, it's wonderful because he's been one of the most staunch people against a lot of the things that the EPA is doing, and they're going to put him at the head of it, which means if he's given the opportunity and actually does what I know he can do, the EPA will actually be able to roll back to its actual mandate, which is just to make sure that we're safe, that our air is safe to breathe, and that we have clean rivers, waterways, etc., which is what they were originally created for. The problem is, under every administration after their creation, they have found more and more ways to justify their existence, and in a lot of ways when they do that is through overreach. Now, there are some things that are going on with the EPA that are absolutely insane, like these new ethanol mandates that they have that are scientifically impossible when you look at the numbers for them to get the type of things that they're looking to get from these ethanol fuels. The numbers are not there. There's also the fact that there are parts of my state that are currently not meeting air quality standards, but it's not even really that part of my state's fault because it's pollution that's coming in from a neighboring state that is causing the majority of the issue. But since it's our air that is being tested, we are actually in a couple of places in my state not meeting the new EPA mandated standards, and therefore we are actually facing sanctions, which is another thing that Scott Pruitt has been going to war with the EPA about. I mean, look, at this point, and you can like Trump, you can hate Trump, but a lot of the people that he's surrounding himself with, I'm actually impressed by a lot of his picks. This being one of them.
Let's just, like, Pruitt. So his LinkedIn profile actually says he's a leading advocate against the EPA's activist agenda. That does not mean he is against the environment. That means their overreaching activist agenda. And you know what some of that agenda has included? I don't know, maybe dumping sludge into rivers, turning them orange, that they will not take responsibility for. I mean, you know, basically they have gone on a war against the coal industry. They've gone on a war against the oil and gas industry. They have supported very expensive regulations that could completely kill various sectors of our economy. And what he's saying is that he is against that. He wants smart solutions. He wants economic reform, or solutions that make sense economically for energy reform. These are anywhere but in leftist land. These are not bombastic statements. These are reasonable, logical, rational things to say and do. And in general, on his picks, I've really been hearing a lot of grumbling about the whole, like, too militarily tied. He's now had picked 3 generals. I mean, one of them hasn't been officially announced, but supposedly he's picking 4-star Marine General John Kelly for Homeland Security, who, has a 40-year career, was in Iraq, and then led the Southern Command, which is like our Central American and South American command. So he would basically be in charge of keeping us safe from terrorism on the homeland and, immigration. And, obviously we know about his NatSec pick Flynn and his DefSec pick in Mattis. Also to be noted is that General Kelly is the only recent active leader in the military to have lost a son in the line of duty, who he lost his son in Afghanistan in 2010. So he has perspective. He's felt the loss. He's felt the real cost of war, and he's led our nation and our soldiers through it. So I think this whole thing about, like, criticism of generals and having too many from the military, I'm kind of sitting here going, what? These are in the places that I think we most need people of military mind to be. Homeland Security, Secretary of Defense, National Security. These things don't scream military to people? Are you kidding me? Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and put a civilian in charge of all of those. I'm totally on board with having a general coalition on this matter, on these positions.
Well, I mean, and let's look at this from a different perspective, because in a lot of ways, sometimes it makes sense to have civilians overseeing those particular positions, because you have the commander-in-chief that has military experience. Donald Trump has no military experience, so he doesn't have anything to draw upon, or when somebody comes to him with something, say, well, this would probably work better because, I've dealt with these type of things before. So the fact that he's putting so many former generals in his cabinet makes sense to me, especially in these positions, because, look, come on, Secretary of Defense. Who in the world would not put a former general, if you had no military experience, as your Secretary of Defense? Homeland Security. Again, you don't have any military experience. Why would you not draw upon someone who does have military experience to fill those type of positions? This is maddening to me, that they're like, oh my God, he's putting all these generals around him. It's like he's building a dictatorship. No, they're former generals. Most of them are even within the guidelines of the appointment. The only one that's not is Mattis.
Right. Mattis, because with Kelly, actually, Secretary of Defense is the only one that has a law. The one with General Kelly, there is none. The only one that has that protection is Secretary of Defense. And I do think there have been some decently good reasons for it. However, I would also argue that it doesn't matter whether you are 3, 5, 7, 10, 20 years out. Once military, always military. So I don't really understand the distinction in my personal view of what constitutes you as far enough away from military life to act as some sort of civilian SecDef. It doesn't really make sense to me in all rationality.
It doesn't make any sense to me either, because it's like you said, once military, always military. That's not something that you get away from. It's not something that it never really stops. It's no different from me in my background. I actually still have an argument with my wife almost every time we go out to dinner, because she'll try to sit us down somewhere and she'll want me to put my back to the door. I still cannot do that to this day, because I've always been trained with situational awareness. So if I'm somewhere where there is more than one exit, I will be as close as I can to the middle of the room and have the ability to keep an eye on every single exit to the place, because it's what I have been trained to do. And it's not something that you can ever turn off. I don't care what they tell you. It's one of the reasons why we have so many military service people that come back with forms of PTSD, because once you're in those type of scenarios, you can't. That type of training never goes away from you. It just doesn't.
Well, I would invite anyone to think of something that they have been heavily invested in, whether it be something sports related, whether it's military, whether it's technology, whether for myself it would be dancing, choreography, entertainment industry, or let's say politics. I would invite all of them to ask themselves that if they were technically no longer employed in that realm, or were no longer active in that realm in an official sense, would that make them necessarily less connected, fervently passionate about things involving that subject? Does that separate them so incredibly from that thing that they have learned, been a part of, and, and in a lot of cases been an expert on for so long? Is there a time limit you can put on it that would make you magically no longer be that anymore? And I would argue that most people would say no, whether it's accounting or whether it's, a freaking toy making from Santa Claus. I don't care. I don't think that is necessarily, I understand why people thought it was a reasonable thing to consider. I'm not sure that it really makes any real sense, though.
No, I can honestly say I don't really think it makes any sense either, but it is what it is. At this point, we are about out of time, so why don't you remind folks where it is that they can hang out with you when you are not on the radio hanging out with me?
All right, well, come annoy me on Twitter at jholmstead, Facebook JR Homestead, and check out misfitpolitics.weebly.com.
And, of course, I am Rick Robinson. You can follow along with me on AOTR_host, and I, of course, am here every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, and then we roll straight into America Off the Rails at 11 p.m. Eastern. Well, almost straight. Takes a few minutes to get things set up. And then, of course, that show runs Sunday through Thursday here on the home station, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on AMFM247.com, RedNationRisingRadio.com at 6 a.m. Eastern, which has now been picked up by a radio station out of Georgia who, unfortunately, for the moment, their call letters do escape me. It is the overnight, folks, so I'm not quite in there, but I promised them I would help them push it anyway, because that's like 12 hours of content being rolled over to terrestrial. I might not be in there yet, but that's a pretty good get. And, of course, we're available on crntalk.com every Saturday and Sunday at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 7 Pacific. And that about rounds out most of it. Of course, if you like listening via podcast, easiest ways to do that for both this show and a few others. iHeart, this one is still pending. iHeart is available for America Off the Rails. This show has been officially added to Stitcher. You can also find America Off the Rails there as well as iTunes and a bunch of other places. So regardless of how you decide to listen, we just want to take a moment to say thank you for taking the time to listen, because the fact that so many of you have started listening is amazing. I mean, I do this whether anybody listens or not, because I'm just that crazy. But the fact that so many people are starting to listen is really great. And again, I just want to take a moment to say good night. God bless. And Miss Jen, I guess I will see you on Tuesday.
All righty. Look forward to it.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream.